StrayAllDay.com.
Now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, get a huge dose of personal initiative. That's the go-getter energy that moves me, you, him, her, and everyone else out there to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. We put all this together in one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy. One show, this masterclass right here that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. Today's topic is doing the thing and teaching the thing. Two completely different skills. And you must understand the difference between these two and understand that just because you have mastered one, or you think you've mastered one, or even you think you are somewhat good at one, does not transfer over to the other most of the time in any way, shape, or form. Maybe in a few ways, shapes, and forms, but for the most part, they don't transfer over at all. They are non-transferable. These are both separate, independent entities. I had a college coach when I was in college basketball who had a long NBA career. Now, he would remind us of his long NBA career often as a coach whenever we questioned him. So if he said do something, or he offered some type of feedback to one of the players, and any player gave any type of pushback to his feedback, he would remind us, hey, I played 13 years in NBA. So that, in other words, he was saying that to let us know, look, I have a longer resume in doing this thing, playing basketball, than you have in playing basketball. Because at the time we're college basketball players, which meant what he was trying to say in between the lines was, shut the hell up. Don't question me. Don't offer me any feedback. Don't say anything back when I'm telling you something, because I have been doing this thing as a player longer. I have done this thing as a player longer than you have done this thing as a player. But the problem was he wasn't playing. He wasn't a basketball player at this point. He was a basketball coach. But he believed his experience in doing the thing meant that qualified him to teach the thing. It did not. And this is the challenge that I think a lot of people have these days, that even though the challenge that people have is that though they have been spending time doing something, they think it means that they're automatically qualified to teach it. And sometimes people are good at both. Sometimes people are good at one or the other. And there are many people out there who are good at neither. But we're going to get into all of that here today. My college coach, basketball coach, his name is Armin Gilliam. I don't know if any of you remember him. If you're old enough, you might remember 80s and 90s basketball. But he was a great, we could say he was a top 1% player. I mean, he played in the NBA. That was a fact. But he was not a great coach. He was not a great teacher of the thing, which makes perfect sense because, as I already said earlier on here, they are not the same skill. Doing and teaching are not the same. And there are some great coaches out there who were not that great as players. They were okay. There are some coaches out there who you never heard of as a player. You look at their resume, you say, oh, this person didn't do much of anything as a player, but they become a great coach because some people had the skill of teaching a thing, even though they weren't great at doing the thing. Maybe they never did the thing. And then there are people who are great at doing the thing. They think that because they did the thing, they can just seamlessly walk into teaching the thing with no resistance, or it's going to be easy. And that's usually not the case. So today, what we're going to talk about is the doing the thing versus teaching the thing, the dichotomy between the two of these, and how you can develop one skill or the other skill, or ideally both skills, and whatever it is that you're doing. Because your ability to do the thing and teach the thing, they can serve each other if you know how to utilize them the right way, and if you actually have these skills. If you don't have the skill of doing and teaching the thing, then they can't serve each other. You actually have to have the skill for this to work for you. So let's get into what I'm going to share here today. Point number one, today's topic once again is doing the thing and teaching the thing, two different skills. Understand that doing and teaching are both performances, but they are unique performances. To do a thing, for example, you train, you practice, and when you get really good, you can actually do it without doing, is the saying, is a Wei Wu Wei, is I believe a Chinese saying of when you get good enough at something that your subconscious mind takes over, and you can do it without really thinking about it. Any of you who plays a musical instrument, or any of you who's an athlete, or any type of performance art, when you've been doing it for a long time, you get really good at it. When you're in the midst of doing the actual performance, you don't have to think about, hey, let me dribble the ball, or let me throw the ball this way, or let me play this note on a piano. You don't have to think about those things because you've been doing it for so long and you practice so much, it's become unconscious. You can do it without doing it. So you don't even feel like you're doing it, but you're doing it. You don't even have to think about what you're doing, but you're doing it, and you're doing it at a very high level. It becomes instinctive, it becomes unconscious. And understand something. There are many people out there who are really good at doing stuff, and they do it at this level that is instinctive, that is unconscious, that if you try to get them to explain to you what they're doing, why they're doing it, and how they're doing it, there are many great doers who could not explain to you how they're doing it. They couldn't explain to you why they're doing it. They couldn't explain the decisions that they make, or how they played a certain note, or why they made a certain move in the game. They couldn't explain those things to you simply because you don't have to be able to explain something in order to do it at a high level. Now, there are some people, again, who can do things at a high level and they can explain it, but you don't have to be able to explain something in order to do it. If you're a great basketball player, for example, you don't have to explain to your coach how you did something on the court. If you scored 30 points and you had 15 assists and 12 rebounds and helped the team win the championship, you don't have to explain that to anyone to get the trophy. All right, they're still going to give you the trophy either way. All right, the explanation is extra. So this instinctive and unconscious performer, and there are many of them out there, they don't have to, again, explain or teach, or even here's another thing. They don't even have to understand what they did and how they did it in order to do it well. They don't even have to be able to explain it to themselves. If you just put a gun to their head and told them to explain exactly what they did to score all those points or to play that beautiful music, they might not be able to explain it to you. Or how they get themselves into character and they do their acting on TV or in the movies or whatever it is that they do, they may not be able to explain it to you. They might get their brains blown out because they can't explain what they did. They can't explain their own actions, let alone explain to somebody else what actions to take. Because this is not a requirement of performing at a high level. Doing does not require explanation. So there may be someone who's listening to this right now. There are things that you can do really well without thinking about it at all. Maybe you haven't thought about it in a long time. And if someone challenged you to explain it or asked you to explain it, you might not be able to do it. You may be at a loss for words. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. No, it just means that you've gotten this to an unconscious level, your performance, to the point that you don't have to think about it and you never thought about thinking about it. But understand that to teach a thing, additional steps are required. And it may be steps required that you haven't even mastered the first step. You never became good enough at doing the thing that you could do it instinctively and unconsciously without thinking about it at all. But if you follow these other steps, you would be able to teach that thing. Maybe you have a little bit of experience, maybe trying to do the thing, and you realize that you're not good at doing the thing, but you have a good grasp of what it takes. So the teaching part takes a little bit more, actually a lot more than just doing part. So the doing part is, we'll say, quote unquote, the easier route to go, because you can do something and do it really well and get all the rewards and spoils that come with doing it without developing too much of an explanation skill. You don't have to have too much verbal skill when it comes to explaining and breaking down your actions in order to do them at a high level. A person that I think of right now as I'm talking about this is Kobe Bryant. Rest in peace. When he had a TV show on ESPN Plus, it was called Detail, where he would go over footage from basketball games of a particular player, and he would be breaking down what the player was doing, how they were moving, how they could do it better, what he would do differently, how that player could just get a slight edge on their opponent. And he did this with female players, with NBA players. He did it with players who had played back in the day. I think he used some of his own clips on things like that. And then Kobe Bryant, we all know he was very good at doing the thing. And I doubt he was on the court thinking about what move to do when he was on the court. He just did it instinctively because he had put in so much time and work and practice. But at the same time, when Kobe Bryant stopped playing, he was able to get on a microphone and explain what was going on the court to a person who might not know much, not know anything, or someone who was out there doing it. But Kobe was able to explain, hey, here's what you did. Here's how it could be better. Here's why you messed up on this. Here's a slight change you can make right here that will make things work perfectly for you if you just make this slight little adjustment. So Kobe was one of the rare people who was good at both, doing the thing and explaining the thing at the exact same time. But you don't have to have the explaining part, the teaching part, in order to do. All right, now we got that clear. Let's move on to point number 2. Today's topic is doing the thing and teaching the thing, 2 completely different skills. Number 2, teaching a skill requires not only an understanding of how to do it, not necessarily the ability to do it. Understand that the understanding of how to do something is not the same as the ability to do something. Everybody follow me? Just because you know how something is done, well, let me say that again. Not knowing, let me say that again. All right. Not being able to do something very well does not preclude you from being able to explain and understand how it's done well. I can give you a pretty good understanding, a good explanation of how to, let's say, what's something that I could say? Let's say catch a football in a football game, but I've never been that great at doing it because I've never played in a football game and didn't play football at any level of consequence or inconsequence, but I can give you a pretty good explanation of how it's done, even though I've never done it myself. Now, does that mean I'm gonna get out and start teaching football? Probably not, because I'm not passionate about it. I don't have that much information. But just because you're not great at doing something does not preclude you from being able to teach it to somebody else. Teaching requires an understanding of how to do something, not an ability, but an understanding, but also an ability to decipher what's happening, why it's happening, and an ability to explain that to others in such a way that they can understand it and implement it. That's a mouthful what I just said, so let me say that again slowly. Teaching a skill requires that you have an understanding of how to do something. Remember that understanding and ability are two different things, but you need the ability to decipher what is happening, why it's happening, and you must be able to explain to others what's happening, why it's happening, in such a way that they can understand what you're saying and they can go implement what they are learning. That is what is required of a teacher. So if we just compare this, before I even go deeper into the second point, I told you the doer, the person who's great at doing a thing, often they can get to the point of doing it unconsciously. They don't have to think, they don't have to explain, they don't have to write anything down. They just unconsciously and instinctively do what they do, and they're really good at it. The teacher may not be much of a doer of the thing. Let's just assume that they're not. But they understand what's happening. They may not be at Kobe Bryant's level of performance on the court, but they understand what Kobe is doing. And they can decipher what Kobe's doing, why he's doing it, how he's doing it, and they can explain to others what Kobe's doing, why and how, in such a way that other people can say, oh, I get it, what you're seeing, what you're showing us here, what Kobe's doing, I'll be able to take this little piece and implement it into my own game. That's what a teacher is required to do. To teach a thing, you do not need to be able to do it, but you must understand how it's done. You must understand the what, why, and how of what's being done. And you got to be able to explain it to another person verbally. You got to be able to get it out of your head, codify it, and get it into somebody else's head in such a way that they understand, appreciate, and are able to implement it, hopefully to produce a result. Because then that'll make you look good as a teacher. Oh yeah, one more thing the teacher must do. You must have the ability to identify and correct errors and mistakes in the people that you're teaching. So the doer just has to go out there and do it. Instinctively, don't even think about it. Just do it and get it done. Great. You get the trophy, you get the rewards. Everybody loves you. The teacher may not be able to do it, but you understand it. You understand the what, why, and how of it. You're able to explain it to other people in a way that they can get it. And when people are messing up and doing it, you got to be able to notice, hey, you're messing that up. You're not doing that right. Here's where you're messing up. Here's where you fix it. And here's why. The teacher has to do all of those things. Teacher got to be able to see what's being done wrong, understand why it's being done wrong, and then fix what's being done wrong. Diagnose and then fix the problem. So can you see how the teacher, there are many more steps required of that individual than there is the doer. And from this, just from this brief explanation I've given you of teaching the thing, you can understand why teaching may not be for everyone. Everybody can't teach. Because good teaching requires a deep thought process that goes many layers deep. To be a really good player of basketball, or a really good person who runs a business or builds some kind of company or comes up with some kind of new concept, you only need really one skill, and that's your ability to actually do that thing. Whatever it is, you're trading on yourself. I mean, you are the most valuable commodity, maybe the only commodity in your business. So if something happens to you, that's a failure point in whatever it is that you're doing. But you only got to do one thing. The teacher has to do all of these other things. And you had to do it for other people. It's not just you doing it. The basketball player goes on the court, you perform, you get the trophy, everybody's looking at you. The teacher, you can't be a successful teacher without some students. So you got to deal with other people. You need a high level of communication skills to be a teacher. You don't have to be a great communicator to be great at basketball, or great at singing or acting or rapping. You don't have to be a great communicator. You just got to be great at your performance, whatever that happens to be. Teaching requires a deep thought process so you can see it. First of all, understanding, Then the who, why, not the what, why, and the how, what's happening. Identifying what's going wrong, where somebody may make a mistake, identifying that mistake, fixing the mistake. So you got to have some idea of what the pitfalls are, where are the failure points, where are the mistakes actually happening in the thing that you're doing. And you got to be able to explain this to another person. This requires some communication skill. So you can see how teaching is a much deeper level of understanding, of analyzing, and of communicating than the doer. And something that you also should think about is when you're done doing the thing, you could teach the thing forever. You can't always do the thing forever. Athletes, I'm thinking of especially, an athlete can play a sport for a certain amount of time, depending on what sport you're playing, but usually careers are short for athletes, for many sports. Maybe something like golf, you can go for a pretty long time, but basketball, football, baseball, hockey, the careers are relatively short compared to the career spans of people who aren't playing sports, who are using their brains in some way as opposed to using their bodies. So, since the playing career, doing the thing, is relatively short, the person who is doing the thing but learns how to teach the thing, they can extend their career span. They can extend how long they're relevant in that area, or how long they can bring some value to people in that area, simply because they develop the skill to teach the thing, which is using the brain. The brain doesn't start to break down the way the body does as quickly, at least when it comes to performing in sports. Point number 3. Today's topic, doing the thing and teaching the thing, 2 completely different skills. Number 3, how do you go from doing the thing to teaching the thing? Let's say you're great at doing the thing right now, or you're at least good enough, you're competent at doing the thing, but you're like, man, I'm not going to be able to do this thing forever. How about I develop my skills of teaching the thing, because that'll extend my shelf life. That'll make me valuable for longer and to more people, because when you're doing the thing, you can only perform for however many people are watching you do your thing at a time. But when you teach the thing, you are giving the skill of doing to a whole bunch of people at the same time. You can multiply your impact when you're teaching the thing in ways that you may not be able to when you're just doing the thing yourself. Now, are there exceptions to that? Yes. So how do you go from doing to teaching? I would say the most important thing you must do to go from doing the thing to teaching the thing, you want to get really good at teaching the thing, is you must invest in your communication skills. Because if you can't communicate, there's no way you can teach somebody else. You can't teach another person anything if you can't communicate what's in your head to another individual. It's impossible for you to teach them. You can't talk to them or write to them or whatever way you can communicate. Sign language. Masterclass number 1264. I told you 3 communication skills that you must master. If you don't know what they are, go listen to 1264. Masterclass 1257. Investing in your communication skills. This is the exact point here. Number 3, you must invest in your communication skills. Go listen to Masterclass 1257, where I talk about investing in your communication skills. The way that you communicate. What are some ways that we can communicate with each other in the world today, at least as of this recording? We can write things down. So do you have the skill of writing? Can you write pretty well? What about speaking? Like I'm doing right now on this microphone, or if I was on a stage in front of an audience, or I was just sitting down talking to you one-on-one. Are you able to speak and verbally get your point across in such a way that other people can understand, appreciate, and implement? Getting your thoughts down on paper, that's the writing part. And I say on paper, I mean that in quotation marks, on paper. So it could be written down digitally, written down on actual paper, but in some way you take what's out of your head and getting it into a format that other people can consume even when you're not around. So that could also be on camera. If I make a video of me sharing some concept that I like to talk about, technically that's what I mean by saying getting it on paper. In other words, getting it out of your head and into a format that other people can consume and benefit from without actually having to meet you one-on-one and hear you talk about it. All right, so instead of one-to-one, you go to one-to-many. That's what I mean by getting it on paper. Can you communicate through a camera? You could be in a room by yourself, but the camera's on, so there are thousands, maybe millions of people who are going to see what you're saying. Can you communicate that way? Can you communicate on a microphone? Can you communicate to a live audience? We put you in a room with actual people sitting in that room listening to you talk about whatever you're talking about. Can you clearly communicate your thoughts, your ideas, your concepts, your frameworks to those people in a way that they, again, number 1, understand, number 2, appreciate, number 3, implement, number 4, get a result? To teach, you must be good at all of these. I'm going to repeat that sentence. To teach, You must be good at all of these. Masterclass number 1101, I talked about codification. Codification is the breaking down of knowledge into understandable pieces. To codify something means to take what you know and systematize it in such a way that another person can learn what you know without you sitting down and downloading your brain and then uploading it into their brain. I don't think that's even scientifically possible right now. So the only other way we can take what's in our heads and get it into other people's heads is we got to codify what we know. You listen to this show often enough, that's all I'm doing. I'm codifying my knowledge. I'm taking the thing that I know and I'm breaking it down and explaining it to you in such a way that now you know it. Or at least now you have access to knowing it. That you might not know it just by listening to this one time. You should be listening to any one of these masterclasses over and over again. At least the ones that are most relevant to you. You should be listening to them over and over again to the point that you're finishing my sentences and my words are ringing in your head even when you're not listening to me. Codification is taking what you know and putting it into understandably consumed pieces. Small enough pieces to consume for a person who knows none of what you know, so that when they're done, they actually know at least some of what you know. And that's codifying. If you cannot codify your knowledge, you cannot become a knowledge entrepreneur. You cannot become a subject matter expert if you can't codify your knowledge. To codify your knowledge, again, take what you know, put it into some type of format on paper, video, audio, written, that other people can learn from even without ever meeting or interacting with you directly. This is the most important skill of teaching a thing, is that it has to be codified. And what's interesting is, if you think back to your school days, or at least for those of you who are not actually in school who are listening to me here, is if a teacher gets a textbook, you go to some class and they give you the textbook, right? And the teacher is teaching stuff out of that textbook, but the teacher didn't really codify the knowledge themselves. This is the type of teacher that the students would say something like, well, he or she can't teach, or they don't teach. They just read stuff out of the book and give us notes to take, but they don't really understand it because they're not able to break it down and explain it in such a way that everybody can pick up on it. Not everybody's built to be a teacher. There's some teachers out there who actually have the job of teacher and they're getting a paycheck for being a teacher, but they're not teachers because they don't know how to codify knowledge in such a way that they can break it down and explain it to other people in bite-sized portions. And understand that you can codify knowledge that isn't even from you. So, for example, I could read somebody else's book and take what they said in their book, and I can codify their knowledge and give it to you so that you understand what's in the book through me without ever actually reading the book. That's codification. So a school teacher, usually they're not the one who wrote the textbook, right? They can take what's in the textbook, codify that textbook knowledge, and give it to you in such a way that you understand what's in the book, and you might not have even read that part of the book yet, but the teacher is good enough to codify that knowledge. Codification is a skill, ladies and gentlemen. It is a super valuable skill because I'm going to tell you right now, I can already read the tea leaves. I see where it's going. The knowledge information industry is about to blow up. People who have specialized knowledge in certain fields and are able to codify and explain it to other people that's about to be the new wave. Okay? So there was a time when blogging was the wave. 2008, 10, 11, that was when blogging was the wave. Then YouTube became the wave. So first everybody had a blog, then everybody had a YouTube channel. Right now it's podcasting, right? Everybody has a podcast. The next wave is everybody's going to have some type of knowledge or information that they are peddling, sharing with the world in exchange for money. Knowledge entrepreneurship is the next wave. Everybody's going to be selling some type of knowledge. Here's the challenge is everybody's going to be doing it. But here's the opportunity. I'm going to tell you where the opportunity is at as well. Most of the people who are going to be sharing and selling knowledge have no skill of codification. Meaning they do know things, but they can't teach them because they don't know how to break down what they know and put it into a format that other people can get. Codification is a very, very valuable skill. If you develop it, you're going to jump yourself to the front of the line against any possible competition. But if you don't have it, you're going to be at the back of the line behind people like me who know how to codify their knowledge. Let's recap today's topic, which is doing the thing and teaching the thing, two completely different skills. As I said, I had a college coach who had a long NBA career, and the reason we know this, well, we knew it because we knew what his name was, but also because he would keep reminding us. Whenever we would challenge him, he would say, well, I played 13 years in the NBA. In other words, he was letting us know that he had experience doing the thing. The problem was his role at that time was not to play. His role was to teach as a coach. They're not the same skill. So he was a great player, but he was not a great coach. And he thought because he was a great player, that automatically meant that he was a great coach. Wrong. Some great coaches out there were not great players, and there are some great players who would be terrible coaches simply because they do not have the ability of teaching the thing. And this coach, he didn't have that ability. So the person who really messed up was not him, because he didn't have to get hired, it was the person who hired him. But let's get into the points here today. Number one, doing and teaching are two different performances. To do a thing, you train, practice, and when you get good, you can do it without doing, without thinking. It's instinctive and unconscious. You don't have to be able to explain something or teach something or even understand it in order to do it well. But you may be able to do something without thinking at all, actually, when you're great at doing. But to teach a thing, you need all of those abilities. Point number two, teaching a skill requires not only an understanding of how to do something, not necessarily the ability to, but an understanding of it, but it also requires your ability to decipher what's happening, why it's happening, how it's happening. Right? Those are all things you need to teach something. And you got to be able to correct other people's errors, notice their mistakes, tell them why they're making a mistake, then fix it. You got to see what's being done wrong, understand why it's happening, and then tell another person. And you got to be able to communicate all of these things. Teaching requires many more steps and many more skills than just doing does. And from this, you can see why teaching may not be for everyone. Even though there are a lot of people out there who call themselves teachers, many of them are not good teachers because they have no ability to do any of the things that I just laid out. Teaching requires a deep thought process that goes many layers deep. Point number three, how do you go from doing something to teaching something? You must invest in your communication skills. As I talked about in Masterclass 1264, 3 communication skills you must master. Masterclass 1257, investing in your communication skills. Writing and speaking. These are 2 ways that we communicate. Getting your ideas and concepts and frameworks on paper, whether that's a video, an audio, or written material, and it can be completely digital. When I say on paper, I mean that semantically. Cameras, on a microphone, to a live audience. To teach, you must be good at all of these. In Masterclass 1101, I talked about codification. Codification is a breaking down of knowledge into understandable pieces. I want you all to understand. Remember that I said this. The next wave online is going to be knowledge entrepreneurship. People taking their knowledge and information and sharing it to the world in exchange for selling. They're going to be selling things and making money off of the knowledge that they have. The challenge is that a lot of people are going to be doing it. The good news is a lot of people will suck at it because they have no skill of codification. They also have terrible communication skills. They have not mastered any medium of communication, whether that be audio, visual, or written material. So it's going to be a whole lot of garbage at the bottom of the pyramid. So if you invest in your communication skills now, invest in your codification skills now, you're going to be way ahead of the pack. All right. It actually isn't going to be a pack. It's just going to be you out there. You won't even know where the pack is because you're going to be so far ahead of them. Work on your game. Dre all day.